Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Buckle up. This is Jim Nowakowski on behalf of Interline Creative Group, staying in front of your customers with the phone, subtitled COVID-19 Never Bothered Me. And isn't that the truth? And what a strange world we live in. This course is actually brought to you by Interline Creative Group. It's also certified by the NKBA and the AIA. So I know I have architects, I have designers, I have showroom consultants in the audience, I have lots of other people and professionals who don't need the credit, but if you do need the credit, basically this is accredited courses and we can help you with the certificates, or if you need to self-report like with the NKBA, you can do that as well. So happy to be here with you, and it's protected by the copyright laws. However, as with all of my webinars, all you have to do is email me when we're done, and I'll send you a copy of the slide deck in a PDF file for your convenient review. We've got a lot to cover today, and it's an important tool, this phone of ours, and I can't wait to talk to you about. So what we did is we redesigned this course, which was certified by the NKBA and AIA, to really talk about how architects, designers, and professionals can get a better understanding of using this device, the phone, for calling, especially in this environment that we live in today. We hope you gain a better understanding of the different types of techniques you can use. And what we really want to do is help you understand how to penetrate and use the phone to your sales advantage. We're going to review business basics. We always do that in these courses. It always pays to go back to basics, strategy, tactics, etc. And I want you to discover the power of customer relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot build a relationship through automation. All this talk you hear about AI this and AI that ain't going to work. Relationships are built from human beings contacting human beings, and the phone is one of those ways you do it. So we're going to review helpful techniques in listening to your customers over the phone, including, did you hear that? Did you hear that silence? Recognizing voice signals. I did that on purpose. We want you to learn how to respond to the particular needs and using the phone to use the virus, not be harmed by the virus. We want to use the virus to our advantage. I always like to start with a story. So this is a story indirectly and directly related to the phone. One day I walked in last week, and there's 2 letters on my desk from the state of Illinois. We live and work in Illinois. And I open up one letter, and it's one of my employees telling me, the employer, I get these letters, that they're filing unemployment claim against the company. Now, employers really receive from the state anytime an employee is laid off or whatever. Now, we've been working since March with the virus. We've taken some salary cuts, but we have not laid anyone off. So when I opened up that letter, I was surprised. But I said there were 2 letters. So I opened up the second letter, and it's, someone named James Nowakowski filing for unemployment. And I thought, well, this is interesting, because that's me. And I never filed for unemployment. So right away, we pick up the phone. Of course, you go to voicemail. You read the instructions that come with the letter. I do everything right. I fill out the form. I write a letter. I make sure it goes UPS priority mail. I call the phone number, the 800 phone number that they give you to tell them that this is fraud. I leave a message, and they tell me that they've been inundated with phone calls, and they may not be able to get back to me for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And I thought, well, this is crazy, right? So I do some investigation. I called, a couple of people. I got on the FTC website, filed a fraud complaint. I said, this is ridiculous, right? But who do you call? We don't know who to call. You get lost in the maze, right? Especially if it's automated. Next day, the letter shows up addressed not to my address and my home address, but to an address in my, area where I live. It's not my street. It's another street in the cul-de-sac where I live. But its address, instead of my home address, it was off by a few digits. But because we know the mail carrier it was delivered to my home. You know, she put it with our other mail, and I looked at it, and it's basically saying you filed for unemployment. But now, because it was an incorrect address, I picked up the phone and called the USPS where I live, and I said, hey, I've got this letter, it's fraud, and the person said, it sounds like you need the postal inspectors, the inspectors with the guns. These are, I don't know if you know that, but postal inspectors are like FBI, right? So I called the postal inspector. He said, Jim, you won't believe what is happening with this fraud stuff with unemployment claims. The point of the story is you get lost in a maze. I called the Cary Police Department. I filed a report there. Talked to a nice young officer. He called me back a couple of times, you know, and basically the phone was instrumental in helping me handle not only this, but realizing that automated tools don't work. Today we had from the bank, from a very, very big bank, I won't use any names, but they basically said we had missed a payment. We never miss a payment. So I got on the phone, and immediately I was talked to by someone who handled that. Within 5 minutes, it was straightened out. So I share these stories with you because customer service on the phone is important. The last thing you want to do, and you've all done this, you've all gone through the prompts. You call them up and press this for that, put in your last 4 digits, blah, 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 blah. That's the kiss of death in customer service. If you really want to succeed in business, you have to learn how to really talk on the phone, how to use the messaging on the phone, and how to really be yourself on the phone. Because I want you to know what we're talking about. 92% of adults have a cell phone now. This is Pew Research. This isn't Jim Nowakowski saying this. 68% have smartphones, and that's probably even more nowadays. So people are using cell phones. The average adult spends 3 hours and 43 minutes on a mobile device. In 2019, it's probably more nowadays, but it was more than TV and other devices. And it took a while for the phone, mobile device, to take over, but it did. People are on it. Well, Jim, I'm not on there. I'm not on there more than 2 hours. Think about what you just said. Think about what you just said. You're on the phone constantly. I was on the phone all morning talking to people before this webinar. On average, people in the U.S., right, all age groups, check their phones 46 times a day. This is from Deloitte, which is a big research company. How often do you check your phone? Not just for text messages, but for voicemail. Most people are doing texts nowadays. They're doing their email on the smartphone, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm talking about is the voice phone. But you check your phone. 44% of cell phone users have slept with their cell phones. I am not one of them. I refuse to sleep with my cell phone. My wife would have lots of problems with that. By their side. That's crazy, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, Social Dilemma on Netflix, if you get a chance, watch that. The average age for a person's first cell phone is now 10 years old. 10 years old. Gen Z was born with a phone in their hand. If you really want an interesting blog, read my what this baby bloomer learned about Gen Z. It's on our website. Because Gen Z is the first generation that has grown up on a mobile device. They get their information on a mobile device. They communicate on the mobile device. It's all about the mobile device. And ladies and gentlemen, business has to learn how to use these mobile devices if you're going to be in business for any length of time. Sorry. So staying in front of your customers using the phone means don't forget service. You should cross-sell. You should always be selling ABS, not ABC, but always be selling. ABC is always be closing. If you remember that great movie, right? Glengarry Glen Ross, always be closing. Always. Listen for opportunities. You know, ladies and gentlemen, opportunities present themselves every day. Multiple opportunities. But if you're not listening for those opportunities, They're going to just fly away, fly away. So listening is actually becoming a lost art because we're constantly looking at the phone. We're reading things. We're not really listening. We're not listening to the human voice. And even if you hear an opportunity for another business, share it with that business. That's called networking. It will only bring you great benefits. The question box on your interface is for questions. I encourage you to put questions in there if you have questions, because what I want to do is try to make this an interchange, not just a monologue, but a dialogue. Okay? Some of the business basics that I always ask in my courses: how many customers do you have? I see a lot of people in the audience. If I went down the list and open up your mics and have you respond to that question, one or two of you would say during the COVID right now, Jim, not enough. Not enough. There's always somebody that says that. But that's a trick question. Because you could have too many customers. Jim, what the heck are you talking about? Do you understand there's a virus going on? We're locked down. Businesses are suffering, blah, blah, blah. Well, you can't have too many customers. If you have too many customers, you're gonna hurt yourself because you won't be able to service them. The real question is, how many do you want and how many can you handle? How many do you want? Before the virus, you had X. After the virus, you have Y. We all need new customers nowadays, don't we? But that's not the question either, is how many can you handle? If you work for a bigger company, have you been laid off? Are you going to be laid off? I know clients today who are working from home, right? I know clients today who have been put on notice that they're not going to be working at the end of the year. How do you react to that? What do you do about it? Most of the people in the audience today are either entrepreneurs, they work for larger firms, or they're really thinking about starting their own business, which is good. Because these are questions, regardless of whether you're working for someone else or whether you're working for yourself, these are questions you should really, really ponder and try to answer. Especially the bottom two. What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? I have a friend, many years, and he's thinking about really going off on his own, and because he really can't stand where he works. He's tired of it, wants to hang his own shingle. And we had a discussion the other day, before they locked down the restaurants in Illinois again. We had a discussion, and he said, well, Jim, you don't understand. I have a short runway. He's a little older, right? And I go, what are you talking about, a short runway? He says, well, I'm X number of years old, and I don't have a lot of time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, did you ever hear of an aircraft carrier? He goes, what are you talking about? I said, an aircraft carrier has the shortest runway in the world, and they get those damn jets up, and there they go, right? It's not about the runway. It's about your desire. It's about your passion. It's about what you want to do. And ladies and gentlemen, the phone will drive these answers up despite the virus. And you're going to say, what are you talking about? Nobody's answering the phone. Of course they are. They're actually answering the phone more now than they did before the virus. It's not only that, if you leave voicemails, properly tuned voicemails and properly worded voicemails, you're going to get a call back. You will get a call back. Persistence, ladies and gentlemen, is the key to this. So who's here today? Who's in my audience? Wholesalers, distributors, I have a couple of appliance dealers, I have a lot of interior designers, kitchen bath designers, construction. I have even software developers and architects. So I'd like to welcome you. And ladies and gentlemen, there is no mask required. You don't need a mask on the phone. The phone is virus-free. It's always been virus-free, right? Unless it's your germs, you're talking to yourself, right? But it's virus-free. You don't need a mask. And not having, did you ever talk in a mask? Like, ladies and gentlemen, if I was wearing a mask now, because sometimes they recommend you have a mask on, right? If I was wearing a mask, you wouldn't hear the clarity of my voice. Well, Jim, I don't really hear the clarity of voice. You're talking too fast. No. I've done this for many years. My voice is clear, but if I had a mask on, you wouldn't be able to hear it, right? Welcome. The dreaded cold call. People hate this. Hate cold calling. You should love cold calling. You know why? You never know who's on the other end of the phone. You think you're calling X, but it could be Y. Most people today, they may have a receptionist, they may have a gatekeeper, they may have voicemails, they're screening their calls. That's not the point. The point is to dial. Are you listening to what you're hearing? There's no visual clues. You're not looking at it. You can't see me jumping around my office talking to you now, but that's what I'm doing. So the voice has to be so expressive. And ladies and gentlemen, the voice is so expressive. If you let it express, it's expressive. On the other hand, I could talk like this. Ladies and gentlemen, you should make your voice very expressive. See what I'm talking about? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Curiosity may kill cats, but it opens the doors to relationship. People want to help you. People want to communicate, especially in this virus-infected world. You know what's going on. I don't have to tell you. You watch the news. I don't watch the news anymore. But you know these lockdowns are hurting people. They need human contact. And if you can't physically contact people, your next best bet is not a text, it's not an email, it's a phone call. A phone call, ladies and gentlemen. A script. You should script your cold calls. Hi, this is Jim Nowakowski. I'm calling you because I sent you a letter the other day. Script your phone calls, but get off the script as soon as possible and listen. Don't just talk. Don't just do monologues like I'm doing. I don't see any questions coming in. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. There's enough of you to be asking questions. But overcome your fear. Well, Jim, I just can't talk. I can't make that call. I got to have other people do it. You know, we have 15 people here at Interline, and some people, when they would come here, I used to have an empath here named Betty. Betty was an empath. She hated calling, and then when she found out she was an empath, you couldn't get her off the phone. She used to be able to call an architect and get him on the phone, and the next thing you know, an hour later, she learned all about his operation. She was an empath. She listened, and she reflected back what she was hearing. That, ladies and gentlemen, is called communication, overcoming fear. But you have to have a genuine interest in people. You can't just fake this. I was a teacher for 10 years, sophomores, the Billy Badasses in high school. And you can't fake, you cannot fool sophomores in high school. You're either intensely interested in what they do, or you're not. And if you're not, they eat you up alive. Because sophomores in high school know everything. But if you show a genuine interest and a passion for what you're trying to teach people, they're going to listen. They will listen. So it's overcoming your fear and practice. You have to practice these things. I go around the office sometimes talking to myself, and they say, Jim, are you on the phone? They think I've got my earbud on, but I'm not. I'm just talking to myself, practicing. I'm kidding. But you should talk to yourself. Record yourself. See how you sound on the phone. It's really just a matter of practice. That's really it. That's all it really is. And what the secret to cold calls and to phone calls and to doing business on the phone is, be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else. Don't try to be, whomever. Be yourself. But of course, you have to be like Socrates. You have to know yourself to be yourself, right? And many people don't do that. Many people don't take stock of themselves. But you should. It's really difficult, but it's not that difficult. I've been studying myself for over 70 years, and I still don't know anything. I'm kidding. Good communication skills require voice quality, so record yourself. You can change the tone of your voice. You can inflect your voice. You can do lots of things once you practice. And you have to learn how to accept rejection. I wear it as a badge of honor. I wear it as a badge of honor when I can get somebody to hang up on me. I'm kidding. I don't know if you know who Mark Levine is. He's a big conservative broadcast guy. I used to listen to him. I don't listen to him anymore. I was listening to him on the way home several years ago, and he was bemoaning the fate of the country, blah, blah, blah. He's only interested really in selling his books. So he's really not, he's a smart guy. Don't get me wrong. But he's really interested in Mark Levine. And he was talking about, what you should do to be an advocate, to get involved, especially in your state, blah, blah, blah. And I'm running a business. At that time, I think I had 25 people. So I called him up and I got through. And I said, Mark, I'm a business guy. I don't have time to get involved. And we started talking. And he started getting angrier and angrier, and he hung up on me. He hung up on me. I wore that as a badge of honor. As if you're a radio host and truly interested in dialogue, you don't hang up on people. I wasn't being obnoxious, nor should you. Nor should you. Now, you have to also learn how to accept rejection. So someone, there's a question here, phone. I don't know what the question is. It just says phone, I think. I don't know if you typed it in there. Let's see. No, it just says phone. Please redo your question. Wesley, ask your question again. Sorry. What is a win-loss ratio? Any telemarketer will tell you they operate with a win-loss ratio. Any salesperson will tell you that they operate with a win-loss ratio. What is that? That means it takes a certain amount of calls before you get a win. Some win-loss ratios are as high, who knows? They could be as high as 50 to 1. Some win-loss ratios are as easy as 5 to 1. Who knows what it is? But you have to know your win-loss ratio. I can tell you now, for example, that it's not just with the phone, but what we practice here at Interline is integrated marketing, which includes the phone, the email, right? Mail, but it includes all three of those. And the win-loss ratio on a phone call to get through to somebody today is very difficult, especially when you're selling intangibles. And I showed you who was in my audience. And ladies and gentlemen, you all sell intangibles. You all sell intangibles. You really, really, really do. The intangibles of design, of beauty, of comfort, of security. You're all selling those intangibles, right? So you're going to have a tough time getting through unless you're selling Snuggies. And even then, people aren't answering the phone nowadays, right? They've got recordings on. And you get the calls at night from the telemarketers. So organize yourself. To script or not to script is not the question. You have to script your call. But you have to get off the script as soon as you can. You get off the script when you're in dialogue, or when you're trying to change up the message you leave, the 5th time you leave the message. One of my messages after 4 or 5, 6 tries, I finally say, "Hello, Don. This is Jim Nowakowski again. Listen, I left you 4 messages. I know you're a busy guy. This is what I'm trying to talk to you about, yada, 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 yada. I want to let you know that I will not call you again. Please call me back. I really would appreciate it. It'll only take 5 minutes. I only want 5 minutes of your time." And inevitably, I either get called back, or in some cases, I don't get called back. So I leave one more message. "Hello, Don. This is Jim Nowakowski. Are you sure you didn't want to call me back?" I'm kidding. Because some people you don't call back. Some people will not call you. That's called accepting rejection. Right? Just accept rejection. Right? Project yourself. Jump on stage. Did you hear that? I just jumped. I'm on stage now. I'm performing. Don't sit down when you're making these calls. Stand up. Walk around. Be yourself, right? But walk around. Gesture. Smile. We're going to talk about that in a minute. People can hear the inundations of your voice. They can hear your personality through your voice. It's kind of almost mystical, isn't it? I think. Okay. So here's a question. Thank you. Here comes a question. I like it. I'm going to stop for a moment and answer this question. Okay. I'm an introvert making trench drains available to anyone interested. I'd like non-contact technology. Should I be using the phone? Absolutely. This is a great question. This is not just true of the person who asked the question, right? If you're an introvert, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you now to the introvert of introverts, Jim Nowakowski. Yes, I'm an introvert. I taught myself to be an extrovert. How do you teach yourself to be an extrovert? Well, first of all, you don't let the words define you. You should define the words. Everybody can be either or. It's like a lawyer. You got to be able to argue both sides of the case. There's a time to be an introvert. Actually, being an introvert is the first step to being a great listener. Because most introverts listen, they don't talk. You know, in sales, the hardest thing to do for a good sales guy, or not a good sales guy, but a sales guy who's not good, is to shut up. I'm serious. Most salespeople who are weak keep talking when they should shut up. So don't discount being an introvert, but learn, here's the answer to your question, sir, learn to really change gears when you need to talk, when you need to listen, when you need to talk, when you need to listen. They're both qualities you need. I'm serious. Good. I hope I answered your question. If not, keep them coming. We like questions. There used to be an Abbott and Costello routine. Slowly I turn. Three Stooges did it too. Slowly I turn, step by step. I beat him in something. Niagara Falls. If you remember that, you can Google it. Niagara Falls, Three Stooges, or Abbott and Costello. It's a funny skit, but inch by inch, step by step, I got close to him. Ladies and gentlemen, any one of you, including the questionnaire, can make cold calls. Any one of you can make sales calls. Any one of you can do these things through practice. What does that mean? Well, the first step in practice is to do it. Do you know how many free throws Michael Jordan shot when he was playing and active? I don't know. I was very lucky to see Michael Jordan play. I went to 3 Bulls games when he was playing, and they were rocking. The guy was unbelievable. He would like fly in the air. He had this mystical anti-gravity about his body. But that doesn't just happen. Any great athlete doesn't just happen, even with natural talent. Practice makes perfect, unless you're Mozart, in which case you just don't need. But actually you do. When you're writing your songs, you're practicing. Everything takes practice. These webinars take practice. Writing an article takes practice. And when you really become like a Michael Jordan, you make it look effortless. One of our greatest, I want to say our greatest flaws is we make things look easy for our clients because we practice every day. Everyone that works here is practicing something. That's what they call practice. What do you think they call the medical practice? Do you have a medical practice? What about your law practice? Why do you think they call it the practice? Because that's what they're doing. Every case, everything they do is it's a practice. It's using what you know to make yourself better. And when you hesitate, you can kill a deal. If you wait too long, if you go too soon. One of the great sayings in business that I learned very early in business is timing is everything. You know why timing is everything? Because it is. You only have so much time, so if you wait too long, the deal's gone. If you act too soon, the deal's gone. You got to try to time it precisely, and that just takes practice. It's like throwing a free throw, isn't it? It's like throwing a free throw. All right. Okay. Dale Carnegie knew what he was talking about. I don't know if you know who does anybody know who Dale Carnegie is in my audience? I should do a poll question, but if you do know, type it in there. I don't know if you know who Dale Carnegie is. So if you know who Dale Carnegie is, just let me know, and I'll try to answer that question. I'm going to clear my questions now. Dale Carnegie was a great talker, and one of the things he wrote is how to, win friends and influence people. It's a great book. It's available on Amazon if you want to get it. He knew what he was talking about when you're trying to talk to people, whether you're on the phone or in the room. One of the things he taught is don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Be a provider. Just listen to people. Use you're going to see in a moment, their first name. I could name every person in my audience. I see Claudia, thank you. You know who Dale Carnegie is. That's good. Isn't he? Isn't it true? Isn't he one of the best reads you can read? How to Win Friends and Influence People? because that's what he did. He was a smooth talker. He was a better listener. A better listener. Don't criticize. Anybody can criticize, but be a provider. Listen to what people need. This business started from the inside out. I didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, everybody, I'm going to be in business. Come and buy stuff. I basically went to clients and said, what did you need? I had an empty suitcase. And whatever they told me they needed, I did it. I was a creative director. I was fired 3 times. When I started my business in 1990, I basically said, I'm going to provide whatever the client wants. And I ended up building this business. It was a great business. It still is a great business. We're still standing. I have to pinch myself in the morning. We're still standing despite this virus. Right? Why? Because we're giving people what they want, not what we want. We're listening to what they want. And we're giving honest and sincere appreciation. When you're talking to people, I understand. I see. Or if you're talking too much and you don't hear anything, one of my favorite lines, are you still there? Oh, yeah. Because, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things about the phone, here's a truth that you'll all recognize. You can tell when people are doing something and you're talking on the phone to them. Am I right? You know immediately when they're not listening to you and they're doing their email or they're focused on something else. You can hear it. You can hear it in their voice. So what do you do when you hear that? You just keep talking? Or do you stop? Right? It depends, right? Sometimes I stop and I say, listen, I know you're busy. I make them feel guilty. I'm a Catholic guy, right? I want to use guilt to my advantage. So I say, listen, I sense you're busy. Is there a better time for me to call you back? And immediately you bring them into the conversation and they'll say either yes or no. You know, the beauty about the phone, the beauty about talking to people is that usually there's either a yes or a no. A yes or a no, that's the answer to the questions you're talking to, right? So if you bring that person back after you know he's not listening to you and he says, you know what, yeah, there is a better time, and you set up the time, but done, right? You're done. If it says no, and he'll stop doing what he's doing and he will listen to you. And if that happens, you better make sure what you got to tell him is important to what he's thinking about and what he's trying to deal with. I'm telling you right now. Because if you blow that moment, that's it for your deal. You cannot rely on luck for that. You got to plan it. You have to create an eager want. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there used to be a commercial many, many years ago. You can't fool Mother Nature. You cannot fake sincerity. Some people try it. You shouldn't say that, Jim, because some people get fooled, right? By con women, right? Of course you do. People call that being gullible. My wife tells me I trust people too much. I don't know. I can't trust you at 60%. I have to trust everybody in the audience is interested in what I'm saying or trying to say or trying to convey. And I'm showing a genuine interest. I hope you are too. But you can't tell for sure. There's nothing certain. So you go and you do your best. That's all you can do. That's all you should do. Let's see what research says. I know there's some people in the audience who have seen some of these snapshots from Accountability Information Management. That's a research company. In professional, the impact of product selection, if you look at this, the impact of product selection because of the COVID-19, all of those people are saying it's going to have a high impact. 5 is high impact. They're all above 3, except for architects who are right at 3. And then engineers. Engineers, no offense, seem to be asleep a little bit because they think COVID is not going to impact the selection and specification of products. Well, of course it is. It's already doing it. I don't know why you would come in before 3. In fact, these should all be 4. But this is what accountability says it is. But even more important, I want you to pay attention to the second chart. This is the sort of preference for where people go for new product information. Look at industry trade shows. They went from 64% before COVID to less than 2%. Why? Because all trade shows stopped. Look at the third grouping, phone call from a rep. It went from 40% to over 54%. What are you waiting for? What are we waiting for? We should be on the phone talking to people constantly. Constantly. Smile. Do you know that you can see a smile on the phone? Do you know that you can see when you're not smiling? If you smile when you're on the phone, you can sense it in the voice. See, I'm smiling now. Right? Play back what people said to you. Listen to them and then play it back. Did you mean this? Did you say that? Remember the person's name, Dale Carnegie. It's the sweetest and most important sound in any language, isn't it? When you hear your name, and sometimes because I don't have a memory like Dale Carnegie had, where he could memorize, 100 people in one, although there are books on memory now, from what I'm told. I always ask, please excuse me, I forgot your name, can you tell me? And I never forget it after the second time. Why? Because I write it down or I do word association with the name. And then I'll never forget it. Theoretically, never say never. Listen, and then listen more. Talk about what the person has an interest in, right? I just talked to a guy this morning who made a cold call. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. I'll save that for later. And take notes when you're talking. People hear me tapping on my computer when I'm talking to them on the phone, and sometimes a casual conversation. And they say, Jim, what are you doing? I say, I'm taking notes. I don't do it, of course, if we're talking about, what did you do this weekend? But if we start talking business, my computer keyboard is at my fingertips. I start typing. Now, some of the people in the audience, I know this for a fact, are going to say, well, Jim, that's damn rude. That's just rude. Typing when you're talking to people. Really? Then why do they tell me when they ask me, what are you doing? And I say, I'm just taking some notes. Well, they keep talking. They don't hang up. They say, well, secretly, when you tell people you're taking notes on the conversation about business, it's a high compliment to the discussion. Don't you know that by now? It's true. Try it. And if you're not typing, write on it. And then you'll have pregnant pauses as you're reacting to the conversation. You'll be talking, but as you write, something will happen and you'll have to say, maybe not in these words, give me a minute, I want to write that down. When you say that, the person is going to be flattered, he's going to feel honored. You're writing it down. Well, Jim, don't you think he'll think you're a lawyer? No. I know lawyers write down things anyway, whether you're talking about the weekend or not. This is business. You actually make the target feel important. Sensitivity management. Are you sensitive? Have you thought about your place in life? No, I'm kidding, ladies and gentlemen. Sensitivity. I was with an executive whose wife just died. This was a $300+ million company that I served for many years. His wife had just passed away. I'm in his office. He's depressed. When I got there, we hugged each other. Right? This is several years ago. We hugged each other. I said, have you written the obituary? He goes, no. I said, would you like me to help you? He said, yes. I sat down. I started writing. The phone rings. He picks up the phone. And now remember, his wife just died, right? And this is the conversation that I heard. Yeah. Yeah. No. No. Yeah. Yeah. No, I can't talk about that now. Thanks. And he hung up. That went on for at least a minute, and I'm thinking as I'm sitting there, who the hell is on the other line? Doesn't he hear the pain in this guy's voice? Doesn't he hear something is obviously troubling the guy that he's talking to? And he keeps pitching. He keeps trying to sell stuff. You know what that call was about? He was trying to sell my executive friend's uniforms for his company, for the plant. Are you kidding me? Not only could he have sold those uniforms if he would have just said, listen, I can hear the pain in your voice. Something's going on. Let me call you back. Not only would that, because I know the guy personally, would he have allowed that call back at a later date, he probably would have bought the uniforms from the guy. I'm just telling you, sensitivity management. You never know what you're calling into. You never know if the person had, if something happened to the person's loved one. You don't know. So you have to listen. If I told you what I just went through this, with my tooth, you'd never know it because I'm not showing it to you, right? But pain sometimes has a way of showing itself through despite what you try to do. Listen for that. Be sensitive. Be aware of your surrounding, and by all means, be aware of theirs. Use the line, I can tell you're working on something now. What is the purpose of your phone call? Are you just calling trying to sell something? Or are you calling trying to help them? Are you trying to call them just to find out what their business is? Or are you what is the goal of your phone call? Don't waste your phone call. That's why you have to have a script and why you have to have a plan. You have to do this. Here's a note. I had a dealer that thanked me for taking notes. Others did not take notes while talking to them. There you go. Claudia, thank you so much for your comment. People they thank you. They thank you for taking notes. It's a compliment because when you're taking notes, what are you showing people? You're inherently interested in what they're talking about. Or are you secretly writing your novel? I'm kidding. Bob Stone was the father of direct marketing. Bob Stone has a 5-step selling process for the phone. I want to review it quickly with you. We still have some time. Pre-call planning. You have to pre-call it. Remember Michael Jordan, practice, pre-call, planning it. Plan that call. Don't just start dialing. Have a purpose in mind. Your audience and your purpose is part of the pre-call plan. Why are you calling them and who is your target? Approach and position. Get to the point. Don't waste people's time. Worst thing you can do. Why? Because time is the only non-renewable resource. You will never get back this hour. I am so grateful you're spending the hour with me. Get to the point. Your objective is to get to the person you're talking to so you can listen to what they say. We sent out an email blast once, and my IT guy comes running back and says, Joe's on the phone. He's ticked off. He's yelling at me. He wants to know where we got his name. Yeah. Put him through. I took Joe, Jim Nowakowski here. Sorry. Listen, I apologize. Oh, geez, where's this coming from? How did you get my name? We got it from a database of construction that the client utilized, and we're just trying to find out about your listen, stop a minute. And then there was silence. And most people try to fill the silence. But because I trained myself in this, don't fill the silence. Just wait for the person to talk. And this is what happened. I can't tell you how grateful I am for you telling me where you got my name. I have been inundated with phone calls about this. Now, this guy was tied to a company, a big company, retailer, with many stores. And my client was doing an email blast to them, right, to try to get them forward and get in the specifications. So Joe's telling me that he's being inundated. Why? Because he's associated in the database with this, and everybody who gets that database finds Joe and starts sending him emails, right? Which is another story and another part of a strategy story. But you don't want to inundate that. So I just told Joe flat out what he was asking. He asked me a question, I gave him the answer, and he's telling me this, and he spends the next 2 minutes saying, I'm so grateful to you, Jim. And then we say, Joe, believe me, I'm taking you off the list. Don't worry, we're never going to bother you again. We want to be respectful. And then there's a pause again. And I wait, and then he says, by the way, Jim, I'm not the guy. And I go, Joe, what do you mean you're not the guy? He says, I'm not the guy you're trying to talk to. I do this and this and this for the company. This is the guy you want to talk to. It's Mike Johnson, right, over in the other building. He gives me his name. He gives me his phone number. And we ended up contacting Mike Johnson to get our client into the specifications. That doesn't just happen. That happened because of a phone call. There's no way you would know that Joe is not the right guy. So be listening. You may be barking up the wrong tree. Find that decision maker, but don't neglect the gatekeeper. I have bonded with more gatekeepers than I care to admit over the course of my phone career, right? Over my career. I love talking to the gatekeeper. You know why? Because that's the key. They're not called a gatekeeper because of nothing. They've got the keys to the gate. They can open up the gate. If you saw that old movie Wall Street, when Martin Sheen tried to get, not Martin Sheen, but the other one, the son, tried to get the appointment with Gordon Gekko through the gatekeeper, that's a classic. Gather your data, move toward your goal, and prepare your solutions. One call, unless you're really, really lucky, won't cut it. One call will not cut it. So go for it. It's all about the relationship. Listen to your customers. Always be closing. When's the last time you sold your design over the phone? It just doesn't happen all the time. It takes more than one phone call. Today you need a Zoom meeting or a GoToMeetings. When's the last time you had a sale without using the phone? I would love to hear from the audience if you've ever sold anything without using the phone. Unless you're selling Snuggies on the e-commerce site, right? And then there's calling the dead file. I had a call today from a young man, 25-year-old, graduated from the University of Oklahoma. How do you know all this, Jim? Because I talked to him. He had called me. I was busy. I said I'll call him back. And I always return calls. Most of the time, I'll always return a call. Why? Because I learned something. So I learned about him. He was calling the dead file. He's from a hardware manufacturer of door hardware. And he had gotten the new account. He's this fresh 25-year-old graduate, hungry for business. They gave him the dead file. One of my techniques when I was in direct response was to go into a company and say, give me the dead file. And the owner of the company, we did this with a major company. I'm not, based in Arizona. I'm not going to tell you who they are. And I would say, give me your dead file. And then the director of marketing says, what are you going to do with it? And, you know, I was cocky in those days. Still am a little bit, maybe too much. I said, I'm going to bring them back to life. And the owner will say, how are you going to do that? I said, I'm going to call him. I said, when's the last time you called him? And there's embarrassment now in the facial expression of the director of marketing. Because A, they didn't know the answer, and B, they probably haven't called him in years. This guy was calling me from a database that was set up for that company in 2015. 2015! Do you know, not only, I should have gave him a piece of my mind, right, for neglecting me for 5 years, but I didn't. Because this happens all the time. There's only so many hours in the day. But the fact that he picked up the phone and left me, by the way, a beautiful voicemail. It was a wonderful, short voicemail. He had obviously scripted it. He says, I've just got the account. I'm trying to learn more about your business. Anytime people tell you, I want to learn more about your business, only a silly person won't jump for that. I always want to talk about my business, don't you? So we had 13 minutes. I timed it. Yes, I do time my calls. I spent 13 minutes with him. I invited him to this webinar. He is not in the audience, but he may get the recording. Anyway, called the dead file. Hold time can be horrible. Don't leave people on hold. Answer the phone when you can. And never forget to leave a contact number. I've had so many people say, not leave the number. I leave it twice at least. They make judgment based on your telephone speaking voice. So and I know, by the way, it's not just the one introvert in the audience. Practice leaving passion in your voice. You don't have to say, please call me back. You don't have to be like that, but genuine, right? You want to be genuine. People form opinions and then make judgments about you in the first 60 seconds. That's why I lost half of my audience today. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I actually gained some afterwards, some late comers. It's about your relationship because it's easier to talk than write, isn't it? Writing is hard. You got to have the subject and verb agreement, yada, yada, yada. And that's why surveys work on the phone. There's nothing like a phone survey. Hi, how you doing? I'm calling about, I'm just trying to get a handle on this. I've opened up more doors by saying, I see you're working on a project. I name the project. And then I say, I'm just trying to get a handle on why you chose X for that specification. I not only get the answer, I get explanations that are going to help my client understand why he didn't get that specification. That's just one of the many, many techniques you have at your disposal. When I go on webinars, and geez, since the COVID-19, I've been on more webinars than I care to admit. I'm in the audience, and most webinars, they allow you to ask questions. In 9 out of 10 webinars that I'm on, I get my questions not only in there, I get them answered for the most part. Because I ask compelling questions based on what I'm hearing in order to help me understand the topic, in order to help me understand my client. That's called, now that's not, Jim, that's not a phone call, that's a webinar. Well, it's like a phone call because you're listening, you're talking. Sometimes I put things in the question box like some of you are doing, I could see. You're not even asking a question. You're just dialoguing with me, which I love. And so do they, because they don't get a person like that all the time in the webinar. Your personal contact shows stronger service messages about you and your company. What we say is a verbal. How we say it is the nonverbal. How we say things is the nonverbal. 87%. And you can tell when people are faking it. Just watch any politician today. We care about the people. Listen to the tone. Listen to the messages. It's like somebody recorded it. And yet, there are some where you can hear the passion. There's one in particular I have in mind who's not, she's a lawyer. Her voice starts shaking. It physically starts shaking when she starts talking about a topic she's passionately involved in, and her voice quivers. There's a quiver in her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't fake that. You cannot fake that. That's when you know that person is talking from the heart. 87% of the opinions people form about you is when you're speaking to them on the phone. And they're not based on necessarily the content of what you're saying. They're based on the tone of your voice. Very, very important. More important than you know. 13% of the opinions is based on the actual words you use. It's not, you could say, I was thinking about toilet paper the other day. No, I'm not saying you should say that, but you can see, right? That content has nothing to do with what you're talking about. People hear your personality, they hear your mannerisms, they hear your tone. And you should follow up constantly. If you let a phone call go not followed up, shame on all of us. You have to follow up. That's why cold calling is so great, because most of the time you're talking to voicemail. And then they have to call you or not. See? You hit the ball. It's like tennis. You hit the ball, they hit the ball. You hit the ball, they hit the ball. So what are you going to call them about? Code changes, alerts, issues in the name, upcoming events. Did you see this webinar? I want to share this with you. Send them an email and then follow up with a call. Remember, integrated marketing. Cold calling is hard, but it's not cold if you send them an email first. Did you get my email? No, I didn't. Let me resend it to you. Do you understand? Not all your leads will be the same, and not all your calls are going to be the same. And everyone is an individual, aren't they? They have individual requirements. So answering is as important as calling. Remember, you're not talking to a line in a database. The cold caller today, the guy who got, is calling the dead file, I was a line in his database from 2015 in his Excel file. And he got it from a marketing company that who knows if they're still in existence. And I found all this out in 13 minutes. Now, whether or not that guy comes back at me, whether or not he visits some of the things I told him to visit, That remains to be seen. But I did not lose the opportunity. I learned something. I learned enough to say that there is hope for the world. If a 25-year-old graduate is calling me up from a dead file, I know there's hope for the world. But you have to treat people individually. And you could see as I was talking to him, the interest waning, right? He knows he's got to make his number of calls. That's why he didn't come to the webinar. I don't think it was the right choice. I think he would have got a lot out of this. But that's me. Of course, it's my content, right? But he decided he's not going to do it. And that's okay. And I could hear him after about 10 minutes waning. You know what that means, right? He's losing interest. Now, that's okay. Like I said, rejection, acceptance. I didn't expect him to just come to the webinar. But the point is I was listening. And being an ex-educator, and I love to teach, that's why I'm doing these webinars, is to share information. I knew when to drop back, and I signed out. So ladies and gentlemen, as we wind down, and we have about 5 minutes left, use it or lose it. That is true of anything in life. Use it or lose it. Okay, so now we come to questions. Let me go to the questions. Any questions? Come on, put them in there. Here's a question. How many times should you call before you give up on an account? Great question, Don. Great question. Okay, how many times? I should ask the audience. This should be a poll question. It really, this is going to sound like I'm copping out, Don, but I'm not. As many as you think you need before you can write it off. Most of the time, we have a rule here at Interline. It's 3 calls and then we're out. 3 strikes, you're out. But that depends on the account. It depends on the circumstances. It depends how much you want to talk to somebody, right? But if you're just calling and trying to establish the first contact, and remember, you shouldn't be just using the phone. The phone should be part of your integrated marketing structure, right? I hope I answered that question. Any other questions? Is there a specific strategy for using your integrated marketing phone call, email call? Is there a specific strategy? The answer is no. The best thing I learned as a direct response guy is to test things. I come from direct response, and what you really want to do is continually test your script, test your integrated strategy. Should you email first and then call? Should you call first and then email? Test it. There is no one final solution that you could use. It's all different. It's all different. Okay, I don't see any other questions. But thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I know there's tons of applause. If you have any questions, contact me. There's my email, Jim@Interline Group, Jim@interlinegroup.com. All you extroverts, introverts, pop me an email. Say, I was in the course today. I didn't want to go out and tell people my question. Here's my question. Call me. Yes, call me. Pick up the phone. Call me. 847-358-4848. 847-358-4848. If you go to interlinegroup.com/evaluate, I'll send you my 8 guides, including the phone, which is one of the 8, on marketing. No charge. Just evaluate my presentation. Follow me on Twitter. I have a love-hate relationship with social media these days, but Twitter is one of my favorite channels, Interline Jim. Interline Jim. If you go to the Continuing Architect, I have 6 courses on there for you architects that are all CEU provided. And we're planning our webinars. That's an old list up there, but we're just exhausted our 2020 schedule. We're going to be planning our 2021 schedule. Please go to interlinegroup.com for the CEUs and look for our courses, 2 of which I'm going to have new courses next year. Again, this is NKBA AI approved. I'd like to thank you so much for being in the audience. I really appreciate your time. I hope I gave you something to think about. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas.